Thank you very much for a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Professor Dr. Lucas, for handing me this invitation to speak tonight. And Minister, have a good evening to you and, of course, to all the distinguished guests. It is a big honor and pleasure to be here. It is the first time that I have this kind of opportunity to speak in front of the most elite neurosurgeons in Europe and in the world as well, and it makes me extremely happy to see that the Belgrade and Serbia are the hosts of such a significant event in the area of medicine. So thank you very much once again. It's an honor. And when I had a letter of invitation to come here tonight, I asked, what can I really speak about exactly? Because this is not my area of expertise. But I think that we all share something in common, which Dr. Lucas just touched upon, which is the mental strength, the resilience, the challenges that we all face, the obstacles, opportunities, passion, the universal values of life, and I guess the universal challenges that we have to face, embrace, and accept on a daily basis. We just use the different tools. In my case, that's a tennis and a racquetball. And in your case, it's something very different that obviously saves a lot of people's lives. So for me, you are true heroes, and it's really an honor to be here, to be talking to you. And to talk about the mental strength and the resilience. For me, I would say that the story begins, of course, in my childhood, where during 90s, I was growing up in the times of war, sanctions, embargo, very difficult time for our people. And fortunately or unfortunately for my parents, I chose one of the most expensive sports to play at the time, when there was a lot of economical difficulties. And I just fell in love with it. I was 4 or 5 years old. We used to spend a lot of time in Kopaonik Mountain, which is south of Serbia, and my parents used to run the restaurant. And that was something that was bringing food to our family table. And so every school break I would spend time in this mountain. And then, as a sign of a destiny, back in 91, they were building 3 tennis courts. And that's how I was introduced to this beautiful sport. And no one has touched the tennis racket in my family before me. So it was quite an unknown and uncertain area of sport or of life for anybody in my family, but my parents were willing to take a chance, and I'm extremely grateful to be standing here today and talking as a successful tennis player and an athlete, and this is hugely because of them and because of their sacrifices and everything that they have done in order for me to have the opportunity to play that sport, particularly during 90s. And I think that in times of the hardship, it's usually when your character has the most challenges, but I actually think that it has the most, I would say, food for being built and being developed. Comparing to most of my peers that have grown up in different circumstances, I was growing up in the circumstances where I missed a lot of tournaments when I was a kid because I couldn't really, our family could not really afford for me to travel. I also could not afford an individual coach up to a certain age. Those all were challenges that oftentimes my parents were saving from me. I mean, they didn't want me to know what they were going through because they wanted me to live a careless childhood where I could just smile, have fun, be happy, and dream big, which is what was happening, but it was impossible for them to spare me of the trouble and the hardship that they were facing. So from the very young age, I think when I was 11 or 12 years old, I had to mature very quickly, and I had to take the responsibilities. And I realized that that my desire to succeed and to play this sport was so great that my parents couldn't say no to that. And I realized that they really gave their last penny for me to be able to travel to some of the tournaments at the time. My father was even borrowing money at the time. That was a common situation that we had to face, I think, here on the streets of Belgrade. So he was under extreme pressure, as many people are around the world today. So talking about pressure, it's I think not as modest and humbling from my side to talk about the pressure when you have children in Africa and in India walking tens of kilometers every single day to get to their nearest school, or mother providing to their children the water of the day, and also traveling for tens of kilometers to get that drinking water. So I try to put things in perspective for myself, and particularly growing up in these kind of circumstances here in Serbia, waiting in line for bread and milk with my grandfather for quite some time, actually, and with my parents. For me, it was a wonderful experience. I was a child. I wasn't thinking about it too seriously, whereas, of course, my parents and everyone in the family was struggling a lot mentally to and economically to provide food and drink to us children. But in those circumstances, I think that the person's character really is put to a test, and is from a very young age. In my case, as a child, has been forced to develop and forced to mature so quickly. So I'm really thankful for the past that I had, because today everything that I get to experience, I appreciate it much, much more. And I think it makes me realize the blessings that I have in life, and my family as well. And I play the beautiful sport, the sport that is globally followed by millions and millions of people. And I try to always acknowledge the history of the sport and all the people that have paved the way for us. I think it's very important to always have that balance in life. We all are striving and thriving to be successful, to be the best in what we do, which I think is as a necessary ingredient to a formula of success in general, whether you're an athlete, a neurosurgeon, and anything else in life. I think it's very important to always have a mental clarity and goals, short-term goals, long-term goals. What is it that you like to achieve? But I think a question that maybe not too many people ask themselves in the process is, while you are pursuing your goals and trying to achieve your lifetime goals, who are you becoming in the process as well? So, I think that the past that I just talked about in the last 5 minutes have defined me a lot as a person, and made me understand that there are people around the world that are struggling far more than I am. So, when the time gets tough for me, and when I struggle, or when I get too cocky about myself and whining about my own business, then I oftentimes try to remind myself of what is going on in the world. And I think that an environment is incredibly impactful on the person's trajectory to becoming someone that they would like to become, or achieve the things that they would like to achieve. It is, of course, up to us to define what we really want, and truly believe in that. Confidence and mental strength is the ability to deal and cope with the pressure, and it is also the ability to step into the unknown to deal with the uncertain, to embrace the uncertain, as I'm doing tonight. But at the same time, I think it is extremely important to balance that with faith. I'm a big believer in the higher force, and I believe that I was also very fortunate and very lucky throughout my life. When you analyze my career and my life, it is almost impossible to believe that everything happened by chance. I believe that life has a plan and God has a plan for all of us, but at the same time I feel that we have huge influence on what kind of directions we will take. My friend, I'm sorry, I'm talking probably a little bit too fast here, but I'm trying to congest as much as I possibly can in a limited time. One of my good friends, Jim Quick, who is one of the, let's say, in the last 10 years, authorities on the mental strength and the fast reading. He's in West Coast, California, in the United States. And the other day I was listening to him, and he said something very interesting. He said that life is C between B and D. B stands for birth, D for death, and C is a choice in between. So we are all gifted to have these lives, and now it's really up to us, and it's really our choice on what we do with it and how we deal with it. Of course, everything in life is a perspective. We can see glass half full or half empty, and there were many times in my life, and it continues as well up to this day, where I see the glass half empty, even after all the success and blessings and experiences that I had in my career, thankfully. But I'm still a human being that is flawed human being that is trying to learn more about himself and about life and understand what is the right formula to live this life. Is the success everything in life that I care about? Not really. But it is, of course, a huge driving force. And I've had the fortune to, early on in my life, other than, of course, tremendous help and support of my parents and the closest people in my life and my family, I have encountered some of the incredible experts in the field of sports and tennis, particularly. Tennis was never a traditional sport in our country. We were always a nation of team sports, as we are today. But I am proud to say that tennis has become one of the most popular and successful sports in the last 20 years in our country. And I'm very happy that I was one of the athletes that contributed to that. But I think what I was saying is that I was encountering some of the experts and people that really knew tennis and had experience. One of them is Jelena Genčić. She passed away. She was my first serious tennis coach. I worked with her for 4 or 5 years. I like to call her my tennis mother. She has worked closely with my parents into shaping me into a better human being, really, not just a tennis player. And I was 8 years old, and I was going through classic music, poetry, visualization with her so early. And no one in my family or my surrounding, probably in my country, has ever done that previously. So she was really a pioneer. She used to work with Monica Seles, and for some of you that follow tennis, you probably know that name. And she was also a national goalkeeper in handball, Yugoslavian handball team. She was a professor at the sports university. So she was very, I would say, a diverse person who had different interests, but the sport and passion for the sport remained her biggest love. And I was fortunately chosen by her to be alongside her and to learn about tennis, about life, about behavior, about approach, about discipline. And I was lucky. that's why I'm saying I was lucky, because I was just surrounded with the right people at the right time in my life, which I think it reflects to what I earlier spoke about, the environment. It's 50% us, but it's also 50% the environment, surrounding yourself with the right people who can give you inspiration and motivation to be the best version of yourself, who recognize the beauty that you have, the talent that you have, the good traits that your character possesses, and they're happy to work on those traits together with you and with your family, so that you can become the best version of yourself in the future and achieve your dreams. Later on, a few years after that, my tennis father, Niki Pilic, who is still alive, he's 80 plus years old. He still is playing tennis 3 hours a day and coaching youngsters in Croatia at the moment. At the time, he was in Germany. So I think that from a very young age, discipline was instilled in me, which I think that you would all agree is one of the key ingredients for achieving any success, really, to be disciplined and to be very clear and serious with yourself and with your daily duties. So as an athlete, it's inevitable. You just have to do it. Otherwise, the results will be manifested in a positive or a negative way, depending on how you go about your daily duties and whether you are responsible and disciplined enough or not. And I think what I would like to conclude with is when it comes to the mental strength, I think it's divided really between the more temporary one, so to say, and then the permanent one. I think the temporary one is something that probably a bigger majority of the people is able to achieve, is able to secure. It is dependent, of course, on the success or certain life circumstances. But oftentimes we speak about the mental strength dependent highly on the confidence levels, and confidence levels are highly dependent on our results. So if we don't have a great result, we are oftentimes going to doubt ourselves and have a huge dilemma whether we are able to still fulfill our dreams and our goals, and whether we will be able to succeed or not. And I think that the one that I like more, the long-standing one, is the one that is not only dependent on the results in our profession, but it's also dependent on what we do daily, on our character features, on how we treat others, how we treat ourselves. What are our daily healthy or unhealthy routines? What are we eating? How much are we sleeping? What is the thinking process? What are the thoughts that are part of our daily life? How do we deal with them? Those are all the question marks, and maybe they do sound like a minor details that maybe in the grand scheme of things don't make a huge impact, but in my experience, at least in my example, they actually make a huge contribution and impact on your confidence and how you feel about yourself when you go to your work, your profession, and whether you are able to continuously and constantly deliver your best self. I'll leave it to that. Again, thank you so much for hosting me here tonight. I appreciate your patience. Thank you so much. Thank you.